one of the things that we really that I strive for my staff is that yes, our account execs are the front door. They're the top of the funnel. They're the ones identifying the opportunities, whether they're existing opportunities with existing clients to either work deeper within that organization or through a referral from that client or whatnot. Um, we want the client to see us as a collaborative team. So that relationship or meeting is almost always going to include the account executive, sales rep, a project manager, a designer. If there's other components related to this overall relationship, that might include our engineer from our custom shop to talk about fabrication needs and things like that. So, for example, 10 minutes before I started this call, I just walked out of a call, which was a post-show call, recap call with a client, but there were 6 Apogee team members on that call just to do a check-in. How did we do? How did you do? What can we do better? And I think that just goes a long way to help the client feel like that we're invested in them, and it's not just a sales relationship.
Well,
Well, I
Mark,
think
can I
also that
ask those 6 people, I'm assuming they're different positions.
Oh, yep,
Are they in
yep,
there because what do they each listen differently to that call?
absolutely. Because everybody, and that goes back to the agenda thing. Everybody has a different position they're coming from. So that team was, the team that executed that project for the client. This was a show that was done a couple weeks ago in Vegas. That was a new project for a new client of ours. So obviously we had an impression to make, but that's a typical process for us. So I had myself, obviously, my new business development manager and sales rep. He's uh, co-responsible for that role. Shop manager, project manager, services coordinator, CAD detailer. Everybody that was involved in that project all the way through it was also involved in move in my site supervisor on site. So we kind of wanted a recap and a postmortem of the entire project, and that's a good snapshot for what a typical project looks like for us. It's not for everybody, but speaking to what Chris talked about a few minutes ago, a few years ago, 2 people could have handled a transaction in my organization from start to finish. And today, because of the movement we've made, maybe upstream, and the brands that we're working with, that now requires 5 players in my organization, 5 components that becomes a complication. So once again, it's something that we're working on getting better at. I can't say that today that we're great at it, but because we've been forced to learn how to navigate that, it takes 5 people to put a sizable project through my organization now,
mm,
where 7 or 8 years ago it might have taken 2.
yeah,
So I think that just speaks to the complexity of the business, and I'm sure there's many people that listen to this podcast that they're in that same boat where it's just
yeah,
a, multitude of players and talents that have to be
Yeah.
involved to execute a project.
Khalil, your original question was asking about the gaps, right? And how do you close that? And as I'm listening to Mark, just wow, this is just a great conversation on so many levels. So you had biz dev shop, project management services, AutoCAD, and field ops all represented on that call. If
Yep.
that's the post show hot wash, right? I don't know that I'm sure the customer likes seeing, the full bench strength on the call, but I'm not sure the customer needed AutoCAD guy on the post show call. However, as we talk about closing the gap, right? And at the end of the day, Mark and I, we had, when we were back with a systems manufacturer, they had a great head of operations, a 3M guy. His name was Lanny Moline. And he taught me about the concept. He used to talk to us, Mark. Do you remember about oneness, right?
Yep.
He would he would say, and he would do this, and he'd say, at the end of the day, that customer that was on Mark's call, they judge us as one. They don't always see all the different people and departments and tasks behind that. And we want them to judge us as one. So if Mark is trying to close the gap in culture between sales and production, if you're bringing in 6 or 5 of the 6 are key production and ops people who half of which really don't get face to face with the client very often, you're exposing them to a part of the process where they got to be going, wow, if I'm working in the mill, in the wood shop, or I'm a logistics services coordinator. Just hearing that direct feedback from the client and then call ends. I'm sure your team sat around and talked about it for a few minutes. Everybody
Sure
shared
did.
perspective. That brings that group tighter together. That tightens up the oneness, which I know your company because you're a customer of mine. This part of the special sauce is the way they all back each other up and integrate. And so, Khalil, I'm listening to this guy. I'm realizing that's one of the ways you close the gap, right? You're creating a culture with a respect for both sides. How do you do that? Maybe you're including some people in a part of the business their job normally doesn't interact with. And
Yep.
if you've got good people and they're curious learners and you're encouraging advancement, they get thirsty and hungry, and the light bulb goes off, right? Would you agree, Khalil? That's a
No,
huge plus.
it's huge. And I think for a lot of leaders out there, they may hear, wow, 6 people on a meeting post call. We've already won the business. We've been paid. We're going to
Yep.
spend all that time, energy, resources from our team to do that post meeting call. This gap must be really serious that we are trying to avoid and try to get it closer and closer to be able to bridge
Yep.
that gap.